Hey everyone, welcome back to Citywide Bytes. And my next guest is a blast from the very, very far past. He's been part of the show since our very early days at Unregular Radio with the band Hemlock. He came on later in 2010 to promote his own music. And now, 14 years later, he is back with a brand new album, Ways to Break a Window, which is fucking amazing. Kevin Williams joins me. Kevin, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, how's it going, Max? It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been a hot minute. You've been doing a lot from what I can hear tell. You're doing like the commercial work too, but you're also making your own music. And from what we were talking about earlier, this is kind of a return for you to doing your own stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the project I did on my own in 2010 was really a journey to sort of figure out sort of I guess maybe the limitations of my own artistry and navigating learning technology and things like that. But at heart, I'm a composer, not a songwriter. And a sort of neoclassical conventional composer. So that can be sort of tough to to even find a way to function and find a place for your own art in today's world because everything's so visual now. But trying to work with other media professionals and working with music libraries has afforded me the opportunity to just kind of really dig in and make music on the daily, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and this album, like listening to this before I did the show, I was thinking to myself, this is so beautiful. It's so like elegant and layered and complex. I mean, this is not just like one thing. This is a lot of like different things. So, I'm curious as to the whole production process. Like, how'd you get this whole thing put together?
So I wanted to I think the thing that was really important to me was to sort of have some sort of concept that was guiding whatever it was I was doing because it especially nowadays, like there's just so many, everything is a sound now, right? And that's amazing and it's beautiful, but it's also sometimes incredibly distracting. So for me anyway, I mean I love the infinite possibilities, but when I want to sit down and do something, there's nothing more distracting than that sort of void of nothing that gives you a blank canvas. So I I decided that there were some parameters I was going to sort of put around my project, and I was going to have some kind of target to shoot for, but I didn't just want to, I mean, there's so many beautiful digital instruments out there. I wanted to kind of find a way to introduce something conceptual. So the idea for me was sort of in just like I was doing the dishes and I broke a glass. It's really just it was that simple and just the the different polarities of the ways that you can break glass, and you can bash it with a hammer, or you can sing a high C and sustain that and vibrate that glass into being completely shattered. But those are two different approaches to achieving the same thing. And then when I kind of took this idea and I was like, all right, the brutality would be the drums, and the softness would come from the blending of glass and voice. I I thought it was so nice. It was so pretty to my ears that I wanted to let that sound guide me. And this is where I ended up.
Very cool. Did you get to try anything new for this album, like new sounds or new effects?
I had never I never built a digital instrument before. Um,
Really?
so that process for me was very much a leap of faith. I was uh I did a lot of uh learning on how to sample things and stuff like that, and I'm not sure that I would ever go work at Spitfire or audio or anything, but for me, that was the most honest part of the process was, this is new to me, but I'm ready to introduce it here with something that I'm prepared to share with the world. And so I can say, if anything, it's definitely an honest artistic representation of myself.
Okay. You talk about building a digital instrument. That went like way over my head. Like, what does that mean exactly?
I think it just sort of sounds exotic, but it's really it's much simpler once you kind of know what's going on. But effectively, um, you record an instrument at certain pitches, and you assign those pitches and stretch them across a keyboard so that you can play that. What the sound source comes from or what you blend multiple sources to kind of become and then trim down is usually a your called your source sound. And just with that, you can have a number of things that just sort of happen on accident. And I think that's ultimately what I'm usually looking for when I'm trying to control everything. I want to introduce some kind of happy accident in there, because then that's when it's really special.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're just kind of like noodling around. All of a sudden, you do something and think, wow, wait, that's awesome. We're keeping that thing.
Right, right. And so, like, with regard to the building of a digital instrument, I didn't want to do too much of it. Insofar as like sampling sources and stuff like that. So I took some wine glasses and I pitched them and I sampled the harmonics on my favorite guitar. I had my friend Justin Bellevue, who plays bass in my trio, come by, and he played some bass harmonics. And my friend Seamus McMullen is a folk singer here in Connecticut, and he sang some notes, and we called it the Seamusizer. And so, there's little bits of that, but it's all really layered in there with things, because if you heard it on its own, it probably sound really weird.
Yeah, but then you just like put it like all together.
Yeah, or
Um,
in some cases there's a like a whine or a long note that just, the note itself might be kind of like challenging, but the softness to it is pretty. And I wanted that. That's what we were trying to do in Hemlock. We were trying to have something beautifully broken.
that is a great way to sum it up. Beautifully broken. Speaking of which, did anything from like the old like Hemlock days kind of find its way into this album, whether it's a sound or just a concept?
I think that one thing that was great with working with those guys in the studio was just that void of possibility. Like, here's the song, but what are we going to do about it? And that was always something that we considered. And so I've never lost that. I think that was why I loved being in that band so much, because it fueled my imagination. So working on this record really put me in touch with that. But I'm still in touch with those guys. They're fantastic. I actually just reached out to them, and I know they're working as an instrumental outfit now. So I talked with them about maybe doing something cinematic. And we don't know, but like, they're creative, awesome guys. There's no way that I don't love them. And Bree too, who's I think she's taking a break from the band, but she's still wonderful.
Oh yeah, dude, man, talking about this really takes me back to like those days. Remember, I think I remember like seeing you guys live. God, I forget where it was. It might have been in Rhode Island, but just what an amazing experience that was. And so it's really cool that you're able to kind of like carry on those ideas and feelings with this new project.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that really, I think, put me in touch with that space too, I just realized this just thinking about, we mentioned the live thing. I played bass in Hemlock, and I'm not a bass player by trade, but it was just a crayon you pick up out of the box to kind of to paint with the rest of the guys that are painting. And I playing a lot of these bass lines on this album definitely put me in immediate nostalgic touch with being in that band. I mean, and I right down to like how I approach writing a bass line, because I'm not really a bass player. So um it's fun to me to just sort of like, there's all this space at the bottom, and how do I get to move it around?
Yeah. Now, I imagine like with any album, you like didn't stop at 11 songs. So how'd you kind of like narrow this down from all the different ideas you had to say, okay, these tracks, this is it, we're done.
um that's a really good question. I think, creativity is infinite. I think maybe artistry is knowing when to stop. And so like most of these tracks were composed with this sound in mind. And there's, I think, two or three of them that I write 2 to 3 minutes of music every day as a devotional practice, or ideally. Some days it's a little bit more, and some days, you have to mow the lawn and take out the garbage, right? So, but as a devotional practice, I make it a pretty important objective to write 2 to 3 minutes of music every day. And so in doing that, sometimes I'm working with a sound, and I'm like, oh, you know what would really fit this is this one. And I the the one that sticks out on the record that was sort of like it was finished, and then I was like, oh, this isn't finished. This belongs here. Was Finally a Scientist. Um, that track was something else. And then when I had the palette of sounds for Ways to Break a Window, I went back and I was like, this is just too right here to not have it have this personality. So that was one of the ones that was sort of like reverse engineered, I guess. It was written and produced, and then I sort of reproduced it with this sort of different canvas.
Ah, and how did you come up with the name for the album? Because like "Ways to Break a Window" is such a cool title.
Um, I I think I went through a bunch of lame titles before I got to that one.
Fair enough, right? Fair
I
enough.
wasn't I wanted it to just sort of really say what that there was a glass component there, something that would at least say that there was a concept to thread together these 11 tracks. Even if it didn't, they, not necessarily thematically or anything like that, but just sort of conceptually.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that, about if there's like a message behind this or a theme, especially given that that it is instrumental and there's no like lyrics to kind of like catch on to.
Yeah, just different ways you can break glass. Uh,
Perfect. I like that actually.
and it's
I,
sort
I
of like,
broke it like many myself, so I can say that.
um, when I had originally put together Finally a Scientist, I think it had kind of sounded like it belonged in like a Lethal Weapon movie from 1991.
Oh my God.
And so
Yes.
like
Oh my God.
when I reworked it with this sound, it almost sounded like a breaking and entering, and and so like, just subtle images like that would sort of align with some kind of context of glass breaking. Not everything's a wine glass shattering out of the dishwasher, but uh,
Very
not everything
specific. I
has to
like
be a
that.
home invasion either.
Exactly. There is like a middle ground there. um, i- if if someone said, "Hey, pitch me like one song that kind of sums up the album," is there one that you could recommend?
I think on purpose I put Coughing Glasses as the first track because I
Hmm.
felt like it was sort of the most middle of the road. And So I released that as the first single. Um, but I don't know. I had sort of like I was taken in so many different directions with these sounds, and a lot of times it's just sort of like consciously starting from a different point. I started
Mm,
with a bass part here, or I started with a drum part on that track yesterday, or I started with a voice patch here, and consciously not doing the thing that I did the day before. So there's going to be a deviation to it, but I think that if you listen to any of the tracks and you know that I'm trying to tell some kind of a story, I would say try to listen to at least one more and and listen for a story. And
I like that. Yeah, I really actually got that vibe listening to it because it's the kind of thing that just sort of seems to create the story as it kind of goes along. Like you listen to like Serenade in Stone Voices, you go this way, and then you listen to Butterfly Breath, you go like that way. That's why I've always kind of like this style of music because, from my perspective, it's almost like it's creating the world one track at a time.
yeah, it was kind of, I guess the world was created in that world of sound was created, and I just kind of tried to figure out, what does it need today? And
Yeah,
and then when is it done? When are you done?
which is a really really good question. How did you know that you were done? How'd you know, like, okay, this song is done, no more tweaking?
I think this song will definitely, like, you can tell, if I can listen to it and take myself out of it and just be a listener, I think that I can say it's done. But if I'm listening to it and I'm like, no, this doesn't belong here, or no, I need to do this here, then it's most certainly not finished. But if I can get to the point where I'm not criticizing and I can just be a listener and forget that it's something that I'm putting together or I did put together, then I know it's finished. Um,
Okay.
there's no need to gild the lily, especially like I mean, I definitely want to move on to the next thing too. I think that's a telling thing for me when an album is done, is like, by the time I get to 10 tracks, I'm ready to work with a different sound. So getting to any beyond that is like, I, either I'm really committed to a, you know, a number for that concept, or what have you. But I like the idea of 11 because it's won twice, and this is the first album I've done as a media composer. So
Yeah, yeah. What was it like to come back to doing like your own music? 'Cause I know you never actually left music. You taught, you do media composition, but this is kind of your first return to, hey, a personal thing entirely for me.
yeah, I think that was, it was really like unnerving, honestly. I didn't really know what to do, because it was like sitting in a dark room in absolute silence. And I guess there's a lot of ways to respond to that stimulus, but when you're a creative person and your medium is sound, I think the only way is to sort of dig in and say like, all right, well, you know, what's missing here, and in the pocket of what's missing, what am I equipped to fill? So I think that, you know, at a certain point, it wasn't daunting at all. It was incredibly inspiring and really liberating. Um, but at the same time, you know, committing to such an esoteric concept is sort of, it's a little bit nail biting, because I know, you know, there's going to be a large body of people that listen to this and think like, all right, weirdo. Like,
Yeah, well, that's a really good point because like this style of music, it sort of appeals to a specific genre. Like if you had done like a folk album, well, everyone's gonna like that. Or if you done like a rock album, same thing. But yeah, this style, I think it tends to pertain to a certain segment of the population.
absolutely. But for me, the liberty in that too is the ability to sort of do something different when this is done. Um,
Yeah.
and I actually, I'm releasing a track on Wednesday, uh, um, that is just a solo piano. It's one single solo piano track,
Oh, cool.
just to sort of say like, I sit down and sometimes just make pretty stuff too. So it's called Mazurka in a Sepia Tone. It'll be on all streaming platforms on Wednesday, and I hope some folks will listen to it and maybe think there's a little bit more than a weirdo behind Ways to Break a Window.
A wonderful weirdo. That's what I would say. So the big question, Kevin, though, is this it for you? Do you see yourself doing like another album or more singles? What's going to be down the road for you?
Um, I mean, I guess sort of the plan is I don't know exactly what is next, but I do know that what's next looks like writing music until I settle in on a sound that I want the music to sort of come in around. I did just finish 12 tracks for a publisher in the European Union. I fired them over yesterday, with stems and everything. So I'm happy to say that I'll be working with production music libraries, and but I will be, I'll be creating. I actually, I have a couple things going on. I'm working with a young filmmaker right now. His name is Corey Lehman, uh, to score a personal project of his, and it'll be sort of ambient music, a little bit different than Ways to Break a Window, but I think it'll be enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. I, I want to wrap things up by talking about this part of your life. So, how did you get into doing like musical composition? Because it seems like you've done a lot of different things for different projects.
So I think being a composer was always what allowed me to infuse myself into so many different things. I work as a guitar player, and like you know, a lot of times I play in a trio and a wedding band, and but you know, at the heart of all that is just I love music. I mean, I love sitting down and listening to Claude Debussy as much as I love rocking out to Metallica, and it's for me, getting to kind of settle into this role as a composer is this beautiful regard for all the parts of my musicianship. So it's sort of like, it's really gratifying to to be in this spot, I think.
Very cool. All right. Well, Kevin, man, wonderful to speak to you again.
Thank you so
I'm
much,
really
man.
glad you're still doing this. And of course, folks, check out Ways to Break a Window on all your various streaming sites. It's beautiful, guys. Check it out. It makes for like some wonderful listening. And you can also check out Kevin's work at krw-media-composer.com. You'll find all the information there. And Kevin, looking forward to the next conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Max.
You're very welcome. And for the folks at home, thank you as always for listening and or watching, and we'll see you all next time.